Hi, I'm LJ.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Wong.
And Jen, today you've bought your new camera.
I have brought the new camera that I bought. Oh, you'd like to know what it is, right? It's a Fujifilm X100V, and you can tell I don't know the camera that well because I have to look at it to read what it is called. They labeled it for me. Thank you, Fuji.
The Fuji X100V is a fixed-lens APS-C sensor premium compact camera. Inexpensive point-and-shoot, if you will. From the 23mm f2.0 lens to Fuji's prized film emulations to the rangefinder EVF, this camera seems to have it all, encompassed in its pleasing vintage exterior. But is it the right camera for you? Or for me? Or for Jen?
My brother is a massive camera nerd, and he really wanted me to have a new camera. He knew that I am a very lazy person. He knows that I want to shoot something beautiful and then show it to my friends on the internet. And this is the one that he came up with.
Your brother and I both did quite a bit of research for you. So we were both
did.
like kind of sending Jen messages and saying, maybe you should get this camera. Oh, you should get this camera. This camera is new. Because you actually decided on another camera before this one.
I did. I forgot about this.
And I thought, oh, that's a really great camera. It does really great video as well.
Yes.
It's interchangeable lenses.
Yep.
And I think I said to you, oh, you just have to watch out because if you go with a brand, then you're kind of stuck with the lens ecosystem.
You did use the word ecosystem. And it made me think of animals, which there are none involved in photography.
You're in the one enclosure for the rest of your life.
That's
now.
right.
But then literally like 2 hours later, and this is at like midnight or something, you texted me back and you were like, no, this is the one I'm getting. And then I think I actually texted back, that's a choice.
That's a choice.
That's a choice.
How passive. This is the first time I've experienced passive aggressive from this part of LJ.
I'm not a very passive aggressive person. I'm usually like, kind of very upfront about whether I like things or not.
Yeah, but I think the main thing was that's a choice, and implied was the ...
You left it on red, and I didn't reply to that for the entire like next week or something, or a few days at least.
It's probably the longest we haven't spoken to each other.
I just left it hanging. I remember like the next time we actually met in person, you were like, oh, that's a choice. Anyway, look, you finally got the camera.
I have the camera now, it's right here.
You've had the camera for a few months now?
I've had it for a few months, although I've probably only taken out to use maybe between like 6 to 8, 10 times. I haven't been out all the time with it. I don't take it out every time I go out. But there have been times where I've taken it out and people say, oh, Jen's bringing out her magic camera that makes everyone look good.
Magic. Aesthetically, it's just beautiful, right?
Do you mean
super
the
retro.
Actual camera itself?
The actual camera itself is beautiful, and when you take it out, like immediately, it's eye-catching. Oh, that's interesting. Like, what kind of camera is that? Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, sometimes people think that it's a film camera because the body does look like it could be one of those old.
Yeah, it's like it's based on, I guess, like an old rangefinder body, one of those.
That's what I would have called it too.
A rangefinder body. Do you even know what? No.
No, of course I don't know what it is. I feel like I have a reasonably good eye for composition, and so I like that probably, I don't know if many people like to admit this, but I like that when all the settings are on auto, I can just focus on like shaping something nicely, and then the light stuff can take care of itself, because in all my years of playing with cameras, I have not yet taught myself all the things that you should know about white balance or aperture or exposure. So the thing that I like about this is there is an exposure dial which is set on 0, which you can go to +1 or -1. So if I'm in a situation where I'm shooting on auto, I've got my thing nicely composed and I can see the light situation needs changing, then I can change it just by using the plus or the minus. So for a basic person like me, I like that very much. I like that it's extracted that part and taught me that. And so next I have to learn what this part does and what that part does and what these parts do, so that I can just not rely on luck. Because a conversation that you and I had a little while ago, which I thought was really interesting, was that I was saying when the conditions are right, I take really good photos, but when the conditions are wrong, I take really awful photos. And you said very wisely, that's the difference between a professional and an amateur, is that a professional can be consistent all the time and a basic amateur like me can only do it when the conditions are right.
But isn't it amazing what cameras these days can do though? Like the technology is so good in really any camera that you buy. And this camera is already about 2 years old. I think it came out in 2020. You can basically take any camera from a shop and take pretty photos with it.
Yeah.
Even with phones these days, I think, the built-in software processing in the camera is absolutely amazing. For this body, I think for most people, it's all about the dials, right?
Okay.
It's all about the physical dials and buttons. And it's interesting that you're like, I don't know what the dials do.
I know what one dial does.
I put her on A. And for auto.
Yep.
And that's
for
it.
auto.
And that's it. If you're a beginner or if you want to get into photography, but you don't want to fiddle around with all the finicky bits, then this is kind of the camera you want, because you could just put it on auto and it does its thing. You don't have to change lenses. You just pick a film emulation that you like, and it's got lots of cool settings that you can play with.
2 types of black and whites, depending on how, black or white you want the photo to be.
And I think for a lot of people, that's the level of finickiness they want.
It's a really happy entry level. I can go out, take some photos at night of friends, go home and transfer the photos from my camera to my phone, do a tiny bit of editing, and then upload them onto social so that people can see the pictures that I took that night. And that's sometimes all I want to do. I don't want to sit around and process something for hours and then upload one photo. I just want to show everyone, look at all your beautiful faces, my friends. Yeah.
And it's fantastic, because sometimes I do a lot of post-processing with my photos when I take photos, and I get to a point where I'm like, why am I doing this? I could just do it all in camera. And so when I was using this, I was really surprised at how much fun it is. To me, when you first picked it, I was like, oh, it's a fixed lens camera. And that a fixed lens camera to me just means a point and shoot. I feel like this camera is basically just a graduation from that. Like, it's fixed lens, but the lens is really nice. It's equivalent to a full frame 35mm, which is the classic street photography lens. The dynamic range is really amazing on this camera.
My favorite range.
Yeah,
full of dynamism.
Jen's favorite range. So when I compared it to the Canon M50, and this is kind of a similar small camera, it is interchangeable lens. This had maybe a stop or two better dynamic range.
What does that mean?
It just means it captures more information.
Okay.
So it captures more of the highlights and the shadows in a frame. You can keep more detail in the photo.
There's just a lovely old quality to the photos, especially
Vintage.
the portraits. Yeah. It looks like they've been photos that have been kept and saved for a very long time, and you take them out again and you look at them. And I think that's a really lovely thing to capture.
What you probably haven't looked at, and I bet you haven't looked at it because you haven't read the manual.
I haven't read the manual. I love reading, but not so much manual.
I've had the camera for 2 days and I've read the manual.
She is now my manual.
Yeah, I'm Jen's manual.
Tell me more.
So you might be really surprised, but this camera has some amazing video capabilities.
Oh, okay. So I have no desire to take video with this camera.
Yeah,
and this video is you. You are the video in my life.
But what's really interesting is that you purchased this camera thinking that you were never going to touch video, right? And out of most of the Fuji cameras, this had probably the least capable in terms of video, right?
Yeah, because I had
you didn't
thought
want
that I wouldn't
video.
really use it
Exactly.
for video.
So I took a deep dive into the video side yesterday, and it's actually really good. There are some record limits, so it does, I'm going to throw numbers at you, just nod in politeness. It does 4K at either 25, 24 or 30 FPS. It does 1080 up to 120 FPS, which is very, very, very slow-mo, which is great. But there are some record limits. So I think 4K, you can only record up to 10 minutes, 1080, it's only 15 minutes, and then super slow-mo, it's only 6 minutes. And I think they put the record limits on it because it will probably overheat, like the back gets really hot.
Yeah, because it doesn't have a fan like your camera.
It doesn't have a fan, and
it
so
has
it
a
has
fan
a
in
record
me.
limit. But I actually took some videos with it, and the videos look really clean, really nice, and you can also put the film emulations on the video, which is really awesome because people actually pay for like good film emulation LUTs to use on their footage, and you could actually just do it in camera. You may not know this, but it also has a mic input.
I did know that.
You did know that?
I saw a hole, identified it, and went on with my day.
If you're doing short form stuff, if you're doing stuff for Instagram, TikTok, and you don't need to record a 30-minute, hour-long interview, this camera is really great. The bitrate is only 8-bit, but you can get 10-bit if you go HDMI out. Again, a lot of words that over your head. But if you ever wanted to get into video, it's actually super capable.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's going to give you that latitude to discover your video side in the future.
Moving pictures, you heard it here first.
The other huge thing is that it's got a built-in ND. So usually with these small cameras, and even with really expensive cameras like the R5C, they don't give you an internal ND. So you gotta like fiddle around with filters and stuff. This has an internal ND, which is great for video, so you can keep the background really blurry at lower shutter speeds. I think it's a 4-stop ND. Again, things that you will never use, but you may want to use in the future.
Maybe one day I will use all of these features at the same time. Nitpicks!
Sounds like Netflix.
I'm used to, when we're on the road, using this little one. I call all the cameras little ones. I'm so sorry. It's a term of endearment.
It is kind of tiny.
It is kind of tiny.
Really little.
So this sits on the car dash.
Yeah.
And then we've used that flippy tilty screen before to do various things with it.
Classic.
Now this
Canon.
this is as far as you can go with moving this thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it bears no use. I'm never going to be like on the streets being a sneaky street photographer and looking down on here and taking a photo of you. That's just not what I would do. So I think it would be more useful for me if it actually did flip out entirely like your one.
I haven't gone down to my nitpicks yet, but this is my main one. Like, I hate the screen. Like, either do it properly or don't do it at all.
Like, I mean, if you want a screen that
Personally.
removes 2.5 centimeters from the camera itself, then it's the perfect thing for you.
It's also a 2-step process as well. I don't know if you realize that, but you have to like pull out and then do that. I think the screen's a bit dark. And also it's a bit laggy. It doesn't have touch screen menus, which for me is like,
You're
like
used to it,
finicky.
right?
I'm used to it. It doesn't feel very intuitive to me. You use it all on auto.
Yep.
So you don't touch the dials. But if you need to dial in manual, then you have to use the dials like an old film camera. I think the autofocus is a bit loud. So if you take video, you can definitely hear the autofocus on the lens. Again, you probably, no.
Oblivious.
And one issue I do have with the film emulations is that I think you get to a point where they do feel a bit samey. The style is very noticeable. Like if somebody takes a photo with a Fuji film camera and uses a film emulation, I can see, I'm like, in a way, does it kind of stop you from developing your own style?
Developing your own style. I think it does, but like I'm happy with it. I'm happy to develop my style outside of photography and leave the photography style to the experts who make it look stylized. Like I'm fine with that.
It does have that kind of hipster quality to it. Like,
well, this is the coolest I've ever felt.
Jen, should people buy this camera?
Look, I think what people should do is know that the first thing is never listen to me for advice on anything to do with cameras. This is very much something that you are more qualified to do.
Look, I'm completely unscientific. Like, I just tell people what I like and what I don't like.
I don't think I would ever say to someone, you've got to buy this camera. However, I can report back that some people who I've taken photos of have said, how much is that camera? Because they want to take photos that look like that. So I think I would say that if you have a friend who has one, maybe borrow it and like play with it and see if it's to your fancy. But for me, I love this little camera so much. I love that I can go and take cool portraits of my buddies and then put them online straight away, and then everyone can go, how nice that we can see each other's faces, you know, in person after so many years of not being able to see each other in person. And there's just a real joy to that I really love as someone who doesn't know the ins and outs of all the camera things that you tell me about, like LUTs and dynamic range. And yeah, I'm very happy with it.
I think if you have the money, this might be the best beginner camera that you can get.
Wow.
It's a camera that will give you a lot of joy and a lot more joy than a lot of other cameras would without the barrier to entry or without the barrier to knowledge. Great little camera, little chap.
Another little chap.
A Fuji chap.
Fuji Chapel.
A Fuji Chapel.
It's definitely a choice.
Yeah, it's definitely a choice.